Hi, this is Stuart Weems and welcome to the Investopoly podcast. My goal is to give you simple, easy to understand strategies, insights and tips to help you master the game of building wealth. In this episode, I'd like to talk about how good decisions are a compounding asset. So if we make one good financial decision, typically it's going to have some positive consequences. However, if we make 5 good financial decisions in a row, the results typically will be life-changing. But the important fact to note is that 5 good decisions aren't 5 times better than one good decision. It's compounding, so it's probably 100 times better than one good decision, which really suggests that to be really successful with building wealth and fulfilling your lifestyle goals, true success comes from mastering your decision making. And if you can make one good decision after another, which I don't think is that difficult, which I'll talk about in a second, then the compounding flow-on effects will be significant. And there's really kind of 6 facets, I guess, to wealth accumulation that you really need to master. Good cash flow management, having a clear and efficient investment strategy, investing in the right assets using the right methodologies, optimizing your superannuation. We all have super, so why not optimize it? Minimize tax and protect your assets for your family's benefit. They're the 6 things that if you can really focus on, you can make good decisions in respect to each of those 6 elements. That's where you're going to get the compounding impact. I guess to draw an analogy with our health, we know that achieving good levels of health require us to focus on 3 things: diet, exercise regularly, and get plenty of sleep. I'm sure there's other things, but those 3 are the really big contributors to our overall health. And we know, most people then know that just focusing on one, you're not going to achieve your potential. So if I focus on my diet, but I don't exercise and my sleep is terrible, I'm not going to achieve the greatest outcomes. And really, optimizing your personal finances are exactly the same. You need to take that holistic approach. And if you can make good decisions in each of those 6 categories, the results are, as I said, life-changing. So what are some good decisions that you can make? Because I reckon that there's only a handful of decisions that we make in our lifetime that will produce 80% of the outcomes. So it's that old 80-20 rule. And that's why I wrote the book Investopoly, because I thought that there's just a very simple set of rules that we just need to follow. And if we can guide each decision through those 8 rules I talk about in Investopoly, then that's going to help us make good decisions and avoid, most importantly, making bad decisions. So I think, as I said, there's only a handful of decisions you really need to make. And I wanted to talk about some of them during this podcast. So the first one is, the first decision, really good decision you can make, is stop wasting your money. So I think money is wasted when it has no impact on your standard of living. So the key here is to make conscious financial decisions, conscious expenditure decisions. And if you aren't conscious about your expenditure, your money will just be wasted on things that you don't really care about. Now, holidays are a really good example of conscious expenditure. We tend to get a lot of happiness and satisfaction and utility from going on holidays. It creates lasting memories. And most importantly, if we stop doing it, like we've found out through COVID, particularly last year, but even with international travel now, we really miss it. It really, for a lot of people, holidays add a lot of value. And they're good decisions, they don't increase our wealth, our personal wealth, but that's not really the problem. That is, expenditure on holidays isn't really the problem. The problem that most people have is this unconscious expenditure. So a really good example might be takeaway coffee. If you pay $4.50 for a takeaway coffee and you get a couple each day, and you don't really think about it, they're small items, but if you add it up, that's $10,000 a year on takeaway coffee. Now, if your place of employment provides facilities to make coffee in the office, well, potentially you could eliminate every single takeaway coffee and your life's probably not going to change that much, really. At the end of the day, it's convenience, but how much is it really adding to your standard of living, to your overall enjoyment? So I think it's pretty simple to implement really good cash flow practices. And I've got a link in the show notes and on the blog on the website to a blog I wrote last year, which sort of steps you through the process to structure your banking so you don't have to track every dollar and cent. And it's really about essentially running two bank accounts, one that pays non-discretionary expenses like school fees, mortgage repayments, utility bills, insurances, all the sort of stuff that you're making conscious decisions on anyway, and you really can't overspend on. And the second account is discretionary expenses. That's all the stuff that could go from $1 this week to $100 next week. And if you don't track it, each individual element, it'll get out of control, but you don't need to track every single element. You just need to track it at an overall level to give you a guiding sort of idea of what you're spending and where your money's going and so forth. So all your discretionary expenses go through that account. You transfer a set amount each week, fortnight or month into that account, and that way you know, based on the balance of that account, how you're tracking over that particular period. It's a great and painless way to promote you to be more conscious about your expenditure, and that's one of the best decisions you can make. Let's start really using our money to get the biggest bang for our buck. Let's only spend money on things that we enjoy, and the rest can go towards improving our financial position. The second really good decision is to invest in the right assets. See, I believe investing is really simple if you stick to fundamentals and only adopt evidence-based strategies, and never watch the news or read the newspapers. Now, I know that, I say that sort of facetiously, but really the news does nothing to help us inform our investment decisions. It's really interesting to note, actually I put a post on LinkedIn and Twitter last night, but really interesting to note that the media is talking up the property market now. When I wrote an article for The Australian in May last year saying I think the predictions of property price crashes are nonsense, and there'd be a podcast exactly to that effect as well. And about 8 months later, all of a sudden everyone's jumping on the bandwagon that property's the right way to go. I think neither my or the general media's commentary, either in May last year or now, really help you very much as an investor. Who cares what properties prices are going to do over the next few months? Firstly, no one can really predict it, including myself, of course. And if I'm going to hold a property for 20 years, do I really care? Is it really going to be a key success factor in my investment strategy, or is buying the right property the most important thing? So that's why I say don't watch the news or read the newspapers. And that's, as I said, why I wrote Investopoly, to give us a set of rules and a framework to help people guide themselves to make good quality financial decisions. So what you invest in, so that's the asset, and the methodology that you choose to adopt to select that asset will determine your future returns. So in a way, your destiny is determined when that initial decision is made. So it only takes one decision to buy the right asset or to seek advice to select the right asset, particularly with respect to property. And once that decision is made, it's merely just waiting 1 or 2 decades for the results to materialize. And these decisions, though, are incredibly important. My decision to say, I'm going to appoint this buyer's agent to select the best investment property for me, that one decision, that's a hallmark decision with respect to your financial future. Okay, decision number 3 is to ask for help. There's 2 points I'd like to make with this. Firstly, you don't know what you don't know. And then secondly, experience is far more important than knowledge, in my opinion. You can fast track knowledge. You can read 100 books over the next 100 days, for example, or attend seminars or watch YouTube videos or read blogs, etc., right? So you can sort of take some shortcuts or speed up your learning, but you can't do that with experience. And experience tells you how and when to apply that knowledge. and that's key. That's absolutely key, in my opinion. Therefore, the question is, do you want to make your own mistakes, or would you prefer to pay someone that's already learnt from making those mistakes in the past, either through observation, their own personal experience, or their professional experience? The choice is yours, of course, but in my opinion, paying someone for advice is always the cheapest and quickest, by the way, you don't waste time, avenue to success. Let me give you an example, and certainly I hope my sons never listen to this podcast, but it's true that I don't know everything. And I think keeping your ego in check about what you do know, and even if you've been successful as an investor in the past success doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be successful in the future. So I think leaving room for the possibility that we don't know everything and that it could be wrong is always a good thing to do in financial planning. And the same is true as a financial advisor. I hold strong opinions loosely, and I think I've spoken about that in the past. So let me give you an example. My wife and I sold a commercial property last year. I wanted to obviously minimise the capital gains tax associated with that property. We were lucky enough to make a really big gain. I could have probably figured it all out myself, given, ProSolution runs a tax advice practice, and I'm a registered tax agent. But I knew that I didn't have enough experience with this specific situation. So I went out and found the best expert in that field. I paid them a few $1,000s for some advice, and that advice literally saved us several hundreds of thousands of dollars in tax. So it's just an example that even in my position, it's still very important to go out and seek advice. If it's not your core expertise, if you're acting outside of your core expertise in terms of experience, then ask for advice. And as Warren Buffett says, risk comes from not knowing what you're doing. So quite often I think it's a who question, not a what question, that you should be asking yourself. So if you're contemplating making a financial decision, the best question you ask yourself is, who can help me with this decision? Who has the experience? Not what should I do necessarily. So it's a who, not what decision. Okay, number 4, and quite timely, a really good decision would be to make to resist the temptation to cut corners. It's tempting to find an investment like Tesla, Afterpay or Bitcoin, or GameStop, who's been in the media recently, to make a kind of quick 10 times return. But we have to recognize this isn't a successful methodology, because the likelihood of you finding the next unicorn, the next GameStop, the next Afterpay, the next Bitcoin is very low. And to do that consistently year after year without making any mistakes is near on impossible. Even the experts can't do it. So investing with the aim of achieving slightly better than average returns, for example, so the share market has done 10% over the last 40 years in terms of returns. So if you're aiming for something around that mark, is a good decision, because getting distracted by the shiny object is just a distraction. As soon as you say yes to something, you inadvertently say no to something else. So as soon as you say yes to trying to cut corners and make a quick profit, what you're essentially doing is saying no to implementing a far more predictable, repeatable, and successful investment methodology. So it's really an exercise in delayed gratification to some degree. There's always going to be an investment that provides a 10x return, 10 times return. There's always going to be something that's popular, something that you wished you had purchased a year ago if you had a crystal ball, all those sorts of things. But having the discipline to ignore those shiny objects isn't always easy, and in the short run you might feel like you've missed out, but that's because the rewards from sound evidence-based strategies tend to be only evident in the long run, and in the long run you'll be the winner of the race, and the people that get distracted by the shiny objects will be the loser. A bit hard. You've got to have the faith that is actually going to be the case. So just to wrap up, it's your money, it's your life, and it's your prerogative about what decisions you make. But the reality is there's probably only 5 or less financial decisions that you need to perfect in your lifetime. And if you can nail those 5 decisions, you'll surely enjoy financial security. You will build significant wealth over the long run, and you will be looking back in a couple of decades going, that was a smart move. So, for example, your 4 good decisions might be, we'll track our discretionary expenditure, we'll engage an independent financial advisor. I know I've got a vested interest, doesn't have to be me, could be anyone, of course, that you trust and that's going to do a good job. But you're going to get some advice to put a plan together and help you implement it. The third rule could be that you're not going to invest in speculative assets or take silly risks or be distracted by the shiny object. And the fourth could be that you'll always contribute a set amount of your cash flow each year to building your financial future. And you'll do that with priority. Pay yourself first in that sort of ideal. So there's 4 examples of decisions that you and your family could make, that are going to create significant value and change the course of your life. If you're unhappy with your current financial position, my advice to you then would be to focus on your decision making. That's the key. That's what's got you here. And if you're not happy where you are, then you need to really look carefully at your future decision making. As American author Wayne Dyer says, our lives are the sum total of the choices that we have made. Okay, that's it from me this week. Thank you very much to everyone that has been rating the podcast on iTunes and wherever you listen to your podcasts. It certainly helps get the word out there. So if you haven't done that and you do enjoy the podcast, it'd be great if you could just leave a rating, obviously a 5-star rating if possible. That'd very much help me and very much appreciated. Excellent. That's it for me. Until next week. Bye for now.